Welcome everyone to Authentic as Fuck podcast. My name is Sun. I'm a marketer and I teach storytelling. And today, actually, I want to apologize because I thought today we're going to talk about um, selling and making money, but that's actually next week. So I totally messed up. So today's episode, we're actually going to talk about storytelling and storytelling and kind of finding the right story for your brand. Okay, so let's start with, but okay, because I didn't, because I announced all the, the sell without selling out and all that, all the money stuff. I do want to kind of talk about that a little bit. I'll spend just 2 minutes talking about this. So I think my answer to that is pretty simple because I see business kind of as in the long run. I see business as, like imagine you have a bucket and this bucket is your product. This bucket is your product and service, okay? And like imagine what you need to fill it with water, right? Like and water is customers, is audience, customers, it's the market, right? So imagine you're trying to fill up that bucket and you have a bad product which has a hole in the bottom versus you have a good product or service that doesn't have a hole in the bottom. That's basically how I look at it, right? So, you run a business long enough in a long enough timeline, the people that provide a better product and better service is just going to win in the long run because every customer that comes to you, they're either going to come back or they're going to tell other people about it, and this is how your customer base is being built, right? So at some point, you don't even have to put water anymore, right? You can stop spending money on marketing, advertising, and all of those. You can spend, you can stop all of that, and the brand will stay on its own, right? You don't need to like Apple doesn't need to run marketing or advertising. Like people are still gonna buy Apple, like, and that's what's gonna happen now. But if you have a hole in the bottom, which is how I see 99% of people, like 99% of small businesses that I see, has a hole in the bottom, meaning they haven't really perfected their product or service yet, but they're spending all of their energy on marketing and getting new customers. So what's going to end up happening is you have a bucket with a hole in the bottom. So you can pour in, like, every month you're pouring in money, pouring in marketing, pouring in energy to bring in new customers. And then that just gives you enough to survive for that month. And next month you have to do it again and again and again and again and again and again and again. Like that. This is like the whole basis of marketing, selling without selling out, right? If you're doing the like option B, which is like with the hole in the bottom, basically you have to sell out. You have to constantly lie about how great your product is when your product sucks, like, and your customers are going to go out and talk shit about your product, so that doesn't help. So this is like the basis of how you can sell. Like, so for me, when I sell my products, whether it was my agency at Night Owl, my Night Owls, which is my agency, or Night Owl Nation, like I have zero hesitation. I don't feel bad about it at all. I don't feel guilty. I'm like, you should be feeling guilty for not buying my product because that's how fucking amazing my product is. I can stand by it and I have conviction. And that's how you can sell without fucking some snake oil salesman, cheesy, some funnel, trick them into a webinar and then fucking convert them and then upsell, downsell. Like, you don't have to do any of that shit. If you actually have a good product that works, that you stand by, and you have conviction in selling it, and other people share that message too. So I mean, you know I guess on a high level that's it, but next week we'll get more into it. Anyway, so this week let's talk about storytelling. So first guest we have, I hope I get this right, Roshni. Roshni, did I get it right? Okay,
Yes, yes,
I hope so. Hi Roshni, can you tell us where you're from, what you do, and then your question?
yes. Hi, San. My name is Roshni.
Hi.
I'm from India. I am a business coach and I do a little of copywriting as well. And my question is, um, when it comes to writing a story, it is easy to write a normal story. But when I have to link that story to what I do, whether it is copywriting or as a business coach, I find it very difficult. Like, how do you link a story to what you do as a, as a business owner
Okay,
or as a freelancer.
got it. Well, I'm gonna talk about that question. Actually, has like few different questions in it, so I'm gonna break it down, and then I'm gonna ask for your example, and then let's try to figure it out. Okay. Okay. Part one. I already have stories written, maybe not written, but I already have stories that I know I'm going to tell over and over and over again when it comes to my businesses. Okay. Whether it was at my agency and I have different stories that I tell for different audience. So if I meet with a client and I'm selling in a sales meeting, there's some stories I tell them. If I'm interviewing, if I'm interviewing potential job designer or candidate, I have story for them. At Night Owl Nation, like if I'm trying to talk to a student, I have story for them. If I talk to a podcast, and I have story. I have different stories that teach different lessons, and the different lessons and different audience needs different lessons depending on the context situation. Do you know what I mean? So maybe in a job interview, this person needs this lesson, but as a student, they need this lesson. But if they were a client, they, like depending on it's all contextual. There's no one blanket story that fits, fits all. Okay, so I'm gonna first say that, and I'm just gonna say I already have a repertoire of stories. And depending on the situation, I'll use it here. I'll use it there. Boom, 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 boom. That's part one, okay? So you should have that. So if the question is, okay, so you shouldn't have to like come up with new stories every time, is what I'm trying to say, right? So
Okay.
first, you need to have that. If the question is, oh, I don't have that, and every time I try to add story to that, I get stuck, right? So then I'm gonna say, okay, this is probably, I'm going to say this, but your business is so closely tied to you. So what do I mean by that,
Yeah.
right? I have a friend who's like very, 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 he's all about processes, efficiency, and like automation and blah, blah, blah. So if he were to run Night Owl, my agency, he would put in a very tight process. He would probably hire people that are not very creative, who would just come into work, do their job, listen to him, do what he tells him to do, right? And then leave and not complain and then be happy with that. He would probably have really, really tight process. So they have no room to be creative. You know what I mean? Like using all templates, right? All you can change is the color. Oh, you can just change the color, swap out the logo, boom, boom. Oh, here's the stock photos, done. Like he would create a factory like that, right? And still an agency, and he would probably charge like $1,000 per website. So and then he would have like hired a sales team and go out boom, 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 like, and he would have grown a business like that, and it would have been profitable and it would have been good. Okay, now I run that, the way I run my agency. We're a small team. I get involved in. It's not scalable, but we charge $50,000, $100,000, not $1,000. We run and we have to go hire creative people who's going to break the rules, right? Like and be creative. Try something new. Like don't just do what the client tells you to do, right? Like so even though we're both building a web design agency, it's a night and day difference. It's a completely different company. Okay. But do you see what I mean by your business has everything to do with you?
Yeah.
Because there's no way I can run a company like that. And there's no way he can run a company like this. Because your personality is so tied to the way you run your business. Okay? So if he was the one who was selling, his brand message is like, if I was him, his brand message would be, don't bother wasting, like, if you spend $50,000 on a website today, how much money do you think you're gonna make back from that? Do you think you're really gonna make $50,000 back in the next year or whatever? X amount. Don't waste money on it like that. If you're starting out and you're just like, if your revenue is under 100K and you're just getting launched off the ground until you get to $1 million in revenue or whatever, like just hire us, spend $1,000. We're gonna get you a website that's more than good enough to get there, and then you can spend 50,000. Like that would be my sales message. Okay, do you understand what I mean?
Okay.
Because that
Yeah.
highlights his strength, and you know he turns away the ones that you know sees that as a weakness, right? And then you come here, I'm gonna say the opposite message, right? I'm gonna be like, hey, like, what's your? I'm actually gonna say that to that same audience. I'm actually, because a lot of people come to me like that, and I'll say, okay, how much revenue did you do last year? So I'm gonna say, if you say $100,000, I'm gonna say, okay, spending $50,000 on a website makes no sense for you, because even if you double your revenue next year, that's only 2x the 2x the investment. Like it's not, you spend the money on an ad instead right now and build a Squarespace website. That's good enough for you. I'll just say that honest. But then let's say somebody who understands all of that and has the money and want to spend the money anyway, right? Then what? That's why I say, okay, this is what I recommend. But here's why we charge $50,000, $100,000, because our clients have launch days that has $1 million in revenue, $1 million in sale. So if I can double that, that's $2 million. So it's more than worth it for them in terms of the investment. You see what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's kind of, and we can make that happen because that's what we do. We do just that. And now I can go into like, but you understand my brand message is completely different here and
Yeah.
here. It's night and day different. And the only reason why it's different is because of my personality versus his personality. So that's why I'm saying you, like I'm not even saying like, oh, because you're a personal brand, be authentic, be you, you are your brand, like you are your niche. Like I'm not even saying that cliche shit. That's not what I'm even talking about. Even at a corporate level, even at my agency level, even real estate agencies, even at that level, you are your brand. The CEO is your brand. Remember when Uber was the CEO of Uber got into all that scandal because like the culture of that company was like so toxic, and they had to replace the CEO, and the company completely turned around. Like look at how Twitter and Elon Musk right now. Like you are your brand, literally. It's your personality. You can't help it. Okay. Now that you get that, now you understand that your business, your personality affects your business, and that's what your whole brand message is revolved around. Now, everything that happened to you, every significant story that you had, every memory that you have, whether it's trauma or healing or a lesson you learned or whatever it is, that's in your memory, that's vivid, has to do also with you and your personality.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I mean? So therefore, that's
yes.
why at Night Owl Nation, I never ever 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 say try to connect your stories to your business. Because what happens then is a lot of people are going to try to reverse engineer that shit, and they're going to be like, oh, my business is all about transparency, and therefore, like, oh, and then they're going to try to come up with some story, and it's going to feel fake and forced, and it's not going to work. So that's why I say, just right now, the practice that we're doing for the last few months is just storytelling, personal stories, then what lesson you learned, boom, 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 boom. We're just listing them all out. Once you have 20 or 30 of those stories, you're going to start to see a pattern. And you're going to start to see, okay. And I think the main reason why people can't, this is the point, I think, is where we need the biggest leap of faith here. Like, I'm not religious or anything like that, but I just need you guys to trust me here, okay? Like, there's this point in storytelling where, you're telling these stories and blah, 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 and then you're not sure how it's going to connect. But what I'm trying to say is, like, once you have 20 to 30 stories like that, and you really, really do it honestly, meaning you give in to the storytelling, meaning no agenda, no second agenda, no trying to tie it to business or no, like just be honest in the complete storytelling, right? No trying to look good in front of people, No trying to get validation from family and friends. None of that. Just drop all of the ego, come with 100% humility, and storytell like that. You're actually gonna clearly to see. It's like, oh fuck, yeah, I am like that. I hate that I am like this, but I am like that. And you're gonna start to see the real you. And what I'm trying to say is this, right? If you start with the brand message, transparency, or like, high quality or on budget, or whatever that is, right? And then you try to fit it, then you're gonna fit it to something that's not really you,
That's not
but
you. Yeah.
it's your ego. It's what you would like to be. Like this week,
Yeah.
right? I told my small group leaders, we made a committee where I said, hey, I'm gonna write up this documentation for Night Owl Nation. I'm gonna hand it over to you guys by Tuesday, so you can start updating and stuff like that. Today's Friday. I still haven't done it. Do you understand what I mean? It's because that's
Yeah.
just me. I can't help it. Because I don't want to. I could have on Tuesday just half-ass done it. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, done. I met the deadline and boom, done. I could have done that, but it would have been half-ass. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
And therefore, I can't. It's just like so tied to my personality in every little thing that I do, right? Like those kind of things, I hate to admit it. Like right now, me saying it in front of everybody in public, and the small group leaders are probably listening right now. Like, it's embarrassing. I don't want to say it. Like I hate that about myself. I hate that I made a promise to them that I'm going to do it on Tuesday, and I broke that promise, and I'm so ashamed of it. I can't like. Do you understand what I mean? I hate that about
Yeah. Yeah.
myself,
Yeah.
and though I need to accept that that is me. Because then I can start mapping it to my weaknesses, strength, and like, you know what I mean? Okay, so I'm gonna leave it at
I
that. So that's why I think when you do the storytelling, and this is like I just told you a story about how I missed that deadline Tuesday, blah blah blah, right? You see how I told you the story? You see how naturally that ties into my brand? In Night Owl, I say I miss deadlines all the time. It's part of my brand story. The part of my brand story is like we miss deadlines all the time because when we try to go follow the milestone, usually what happens is right at this point, we're like, oh fuck, we did everything wrong. We need to start over. And now we have a decision to make. Do we miss the deadline and make something awesome now that we know we did it wrong? Or do we just keep it wrong and keep it mediocre and just push it out on the deadline? That one decision is everything. Do you know what I mean? That one decision makes the difference between a business like his, my friends, versus a business like mine. Do you understand what I mean?
Okay.
But you see how
Yeah.
a simple story that happened this week to me ties to my business automatically. I don't even have to try because my brand message is so tied to me that you can't break it away from me. It's so like my personality is my brand is my personality, and all of that is my stories. They're all connected. You can, like, as long as you're being honest. But this is also why I always say, telling the truth gives you power, strength. And every time you tell a lie, it makes you weaker. Because every time you're not 100% really telling the truth, in the future, every time you speak, you have to second guess yourself. So it's automatically gonna not come out confident, transparent, convicted, all of that. All right, so let's quickly do this. You tell me a story, and then let's see if we can tie it to your brand story.
Okay. Um, I'll share the same story that I put out as a part of the assignment on the
Okay,
Night Owl Nation.
that's perfect. Yeah.
So, ever since as a child, I have always been called, oh, she's useless. Like, she can never get anything done. Uh, from the family, then the friends and everything. Uh, it hurt, but then I would always look up to my parents and so that expecting them to stand up for me, that say that she is not. but then they would not, and that would hurt more. So it kind of became my identity. So every time, things would not go right, I would think, okay, maybe because they said that I am useless, so that is why this thing did not happen. So that's how I spent most of my childhood and my teenage and everything. Cut, 25 years later, got married. I was passing through the gates of the Google building. It's the huge building in India, and I was passing through the gate, and I just told my husband that, one day I just wish maybe even I could walk through those gates, one day. And he said, maybe you might. Like, who will hire me in Google? Like, who will hire me in Google? And it was 2013 February. The recruitment for this same Google building started. There were 8 rounds, and I happened to stumble upon that recruitment, and I wanted to, but somewhere there was that inner voice in me said, "You, you in Google, can you even imagine yourself over there? I mean, have you not known that you will not fit in there? Like you have been told that you can't do this." But I there was that wish that I just want to try, but I could not bring myself to try. And my husband was like, try. And like, what if I don't? Then he said, what if you do, and you would regret this decision that you did not even try sometime later. I went for that interview nervous because I knew I had somewhere in my mind made up that after the first round I'm just going back home. The first round got through, the second round got through, all the rounds got through. And still, even after the eighth round, I was still somewhere convinced that, okay, I'm not getting the offer. It's just, a coincidence that I got through all the eight rounds. And the offer letter came in my email after a week. And I saw that email, and that was the first time I felt so proud that, I never thought, someone like me would actually walk through those gates. It was just a fantasy for me, but it just happened in reality. And that was my first step towards, believing in myself. Like that one little belief I had in myself that, okay, maybe I'm not that useless that they, quoted me. That,
Okay. So remember in the beginning I said you're gonna have to have different stories for different audience, different occasions, different thing. So right now the story that you told me is the typical hero's journey story. And you're gonna need that story at some times, but not always. And you're not like that story is probably not gonna be the story that you tell like when you're in a sales meeting trying to with a client or something like that. Do you understand what I mean? But it's more of a story that you might tell on your website or when you're like speaking. When you're it's a story of teaching. It's not a story of selling, right? And the
yeah,
difference is
yeah,
this, right? Like most heroes' journeys are stories are story of selling. I mean, sorry, story of teaching. And that's why I said don't fucking use hero's journey. Don't use story brand in your brand story. Okay, I'm gonna say that again. Do not use story brand in your brand story. Use story brand in your sales page. Because that's what sales page is. Sales page is that your customer is the hero and you're trying to make them see something that they didn't see. They're the hero, like you're teaching them something new, right? So use that. But in your own brand story, don't use story brand. Because in your own brand story, you have to be the hero. Do you understand what I mean? Okay.
okay.
But anyway,
Yeah.
in your own brand story, the whole point is this. In your own brand story, the goal is to find out, is for your audience to hear you and say, oh, I know what this person is all about. Like, this person is very emotional. Oh, they're very impulsive. Oh, they're very smart. They're very intelligent. They're very logical. Oh, they're very kind. They're, they're very honest. Like, whatever that is, to make them connect and feel like, oh, this is what this person is like. Okay. But anyway, so the story that you're telling right now is the typical hero's journey story. So I'm going to ask you, but that story can have multiple lessons, and depending on how you tell it, it can have different lessons. So for example, how much of your work right now has to do with confidence and imposter syndrome when you work with your clients?
Most of my work.
Oh, okay. So I mean, so it ties in perfectly, right? Okay, then okay, then it is. That should be your breast. I mean, okay. So what's the problem? Why do you think that's not the right story for this?
Uh, because I felt, what am I, sharing with that story? What am I telling with that story?
What is the goal of the story? Okay,
What is the goal of the story?
there's a few things. You can tell it different ways. Okay. Lesson number one. Lesson number one. Let's say this is an audience who doesn't even know what imposter syndrome is. Who doesn't even know that they have a confidence issue. They just think they suck. Okay? Like they've never even heard of the term imposter syndrome before. Okay? Now, when you tell the story to that person, the lesson is, okay, like you might be much better than you actually think you are, but you'll never know until you even like try it. So you might be living in this silo where you have no idea what the real world is like, right? Right. So that's the lesson and the whole goal is that to be like, oh shit. So I need to work on my confidence. I need to work on my imposter syndrome or something like that, right? The second lesson here is this. Like if my husband didn't say you should just try it anyway, I probably wouldn't even have applied, and I probably wouldn't have gotten. And the series of things that event, how it changed my life, because it changed the way I think, how confident I am, things like that. That would have never happened. That whole thing would have never, like my life would be completely different right now if my husband didn't say you should just try it. And that's what a coach is, right? Like sometimes you just need that person to push you and make you see the things that you don't see and kind of challenge you like that on the things that you don't understand. And that's what I do, right? So that could be another lesson. So the same story can have multiple lessons, but that doesn't mean one is true and the other is not. They're all true, right? As long as I just feel like I guess I'll end it with this. I guess what I'm trying to say is this. As long as you're just being honest, and because you just told me that story in an honest way, like now there's multiple ways I can connect it to your business for multiple audiences and things like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you're at Night Owl Nation, because I know what I just said right now sounds all nice and all in theory and all of that, but in practice it looks very different, right? And it's not as
Yeah.
easy as it sounds, but I just made it sound, right? So that's why I'm glad you're in Night Owl Nation. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sam.
Thank you so much for being here. Yeah, I think you're in the right place, and I think continuing to practice will help you a lot. Thanks, Roshni.
Thank you. Thank
See
you.
you this Sunday. Cheers.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye. Awesome. Yeah, I'm so glad that happened, because I think I said a lot of shit that I've never said before, or I've said before, but I never said it in that way. So, okay, next. Thank you so much, Roshni. Next, we have George. George.
Yes, man.
Welcome. Hey. So yeah, tell us where you're from and what you do and your question.
Yeah, so my name's George. I'm currently in Vancouver, Canada, but grew up in California. And I am a wannabe writer at the moment, former librarian.
Okay. Why do you say wannabe writer?
Because although I've been writing for a while, for different jobs, and just personally, I feel like this is the first time that I'm really trying to do it professionally.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're trying to go pro.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of that book? I think it's called Turning Pro by Stephen
No.
Pressfield. Okay.
No.
You should definitely you should 100% check out these two books. Turning
Okay.
Pro and War of Art. They're both from Stephen Pressfield, and he's a writer, so it's all about writing.
Okay, I'm adding this to my list.
Okay, and like creative endeavor, but okay. So yeah, what's your question? Like, do you have what? Okay, what would make it worthwhile for you? What do you want to walk away with this in this call?
So I watched one of your podcasts from a couple of months ago, and the guest you had on, I can't remember her name, but she was in her 20s. She was just starting to travel, and you were saying, hey, and she was really enjoying it. And you said, hey, you should start a Substack and just
Oh yeah,
write your
I remember, yeah.
experiences down. Yeah. And I was watching that and I was like, oh, I wish I would have done that, because I've been traveling for a while. And I thought, I wish I would have done that. And then I thought a little bit about it more and thought, hey, I've got the journals, I've got photos, I've got old emails. Why not start putting some of those stories together and, really try out this whole creative writing thing and do that? So that was one of my questions. And then there's another part where I enjoy writing, and I think I would enjoy being a copywriter. So I'm wondering,
Got it.
should I? Okay.
So is your question that what kind of writer do you like? You're not sure what type of writing you want to do, maybe? Is that?
Yeah, kind of like, should I? Are my stories that I publish on Substack going to speak enough?
Oh, how's it going to help? Okay. Good question.
What
I mean, that's a
wanna
very
do
simple
to
question.
earn
I mean, that's a simple answer.
Okay. I have some follow-up questions too. But
Okay, yeah, good. So copyright, in my opinion, copywriting is its own beast. Like it's its own kind of skill that's, I think, different than writing.
Okay.
Or even storytelling. Do you understand what I mean? Because
Yeah.
I don't really consider myself a copywriter. I can do it, but I don't consider myself a copywriter. I consider myself more of a storyteller or writer. And what's the difference? To me, copywriting is very technical, meaning it's about the words, right? Like some people are just really clever with words, right? Like coming up with analogies or something that rhymes or whatever. Like some people are just clever, or they have a process of doing that. There's some and it's the kind of things you see at Apple, right? Right. And then, because when you read sales page even, right? Like the copywriter is really, what they're doing is they're writing those headlines. They're just sprucing up some words here and there. They're not actually coming up with the content itself. Like they're not making up the story. They're not making the shit up. Like the content still exists. The only thing they can do is make it sound better. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
That's like when you're a copywriter, you're not putting out your own ideas, is what I'm trying to say. So it's just a technical language. It's a writing skill. And I teach some of them also in like writing techniques and things like that. I teach some of them in that, but that's not what I focus on. And you can tell I don't focus on it because my copy isn't like that. My copy isn't clever like that. The way I talk, I'm grammatically always wrong. I don't, I'm not refined like that, right? Where my strength is I'm a storyteller. It's not about how I write it. It's about the ideas. Like, that's the thing, right? You can be the best fucking English writer. You can know every word in the dictionary, exactly what it means. You can do all of that. And let's say you're an 18-year-old stuck in a room and all you did was study the dictionary. So you can be the best or writing, right? But you've never experienced life. You've never loved anyone. You've never traveled anyone. You've never lost anyone. You've never experienced life. Do you think that person is going to be a good writer? Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
So to me, there's no difference between writing and living. Like, there's no difference between writing, living, and thinking. Like, I feel like those
Wow.
three things are all kind of the same thing. But because people like detach one from each other, they're like, okay, now I'm thinking. Okay, now I'm living.
Mm.
And no, like I just feel like they're all connected. So I think the reason why, for example, my copy sounds good and my writing sounds good is because I think I've experienced enough shit in my life to understand how that feels. And now, because I understand how it feels in a very, like, in my bones, I know how to word it in a way that you can also feel it in your bones. Do you understand what I mean? And most of that, I think, is the fact that I felt it. I have lived experience of it. I think that's most of it. And then a little bit of it is, okay, how do I put this into words? Which is what we're practicing at Night Owl Nation, right? Like, at Night Owl Nation, the only thing I can teach you is how you can extract the shit that your lived experience, how you extract it into, and how you connect the dots and you think. That's all I can teach you. I can't give you the experience, right? So that's how I think of it. So copywriting is the writing, and writing to me is more than that. Storytelling, writing is, you had to have lived experience, in my opinion. And here's what I'll say. The best copywriters that I know actually are the ones that also do this. So if you hire like a really good copywriter, they're not gonna be like, because this is how beginner copywriters do it, right? They're like, oh, send me all the information, blah blah blah, and maybe they'll have a 30-minute hour call, and then they write the copy and be like, oh, here you go. That's how most copywriters work. These copywriters won't do that, like, because I also write copy for my clients, but like I won't write a single word until I've spent 20 hours with them, like really, really learning everything, and you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
breaking it all down.
Getting their story.
Yeah, exactly. So what I'm really doing for them is not, yes, the copywriting is like the 20% of it, but 80% of it is I'm just, it's almost like therapy. I'm talking through them, through their experience, to extract and connect the dots and help you think it through, to figure out who they really are and why they do it a certain way, blah, 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 blah. And then all my copy is based on that. And that's why it works so well. Okay, now that I expressed the difference, now let's talk about you. What do you want to do?
So am I understanding you right? You're saying if you were in my shoes and you were thinking about, you're like, okay, I'm going to really go for copywriting, or I'm going to really go for creative writing, I would lean towards the one that's most, not pressing, but the one where I feel most passionate, not even passionate about, but just like, I wanted to do this and I think this would be wonderful to do. Yeah. I don't know how to put it.
Yeah, exactly. What do you want to do, right? Like, because like a lot of times when, so many people, like, they say they want to be a designer, or they want to be a UX designer, or they want to be a video editor or something like that. But once you actually go in the field and they start working there, they're like, oh, I actually don't want to do this. like so many people are like that, you know what I mean? Because I think the idea of that job is usually much, much more glorified than the actual job, right?
Okay.
So I think the only way you can really know is to try it all, to see what really... The girl that you were talking about, she didn't want to be a copywriter. She wanted to be a writer, meaning she wants to write long-form blogs. She wants to, like... And that's more like, I think, it's you putting your thought out there, your opinions out there. You're putting a dent in the universe with your thoughts. Whereas in copywriting, none of that is your thoughts. Those are already been thought out by the client. It's just you.
And you're just
It's just your
creating
words.
something from
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a facade, right? You know what I mean, really? And yeah. So, but yeah, maybe think about why you really want to be a writer. And for her, I think that was the best advice for her, because if you want to be a writer because you want to put your thoughts out there, you want to put your opinions and things out there, then you can do that now. You can just start putting it out there, and when you do that, you'll start to attract people who agree with you, and you'll start to, and the community will grow, right? And I guess, like, if you're a copywriter, I also want to say this. You didn't ask this, but it might be useful, because most people that go into design, like I know a lot of people that go into design, copywriting, video editing, coding, whatever creative type of hands-on work, right? Thinking that they enjoy doing that. And then, well, I'm not even going to go there. Okay. They go into it, and you can make money from it, right? You charge clients and you can make money from it. But that's completely different business than building a personal brand. Like, for example, I know a copywriter who's kind of like my mentor. Her name is Laura Belgray, but she has a personal brand. Oh, you know her. Okay. So she has a brand.
Yeah.
So yes, she's a copywriter. That's her trade, but she hasn't wrote copy for clients in years because she has other ways she teaches copywriting. Do you understand what I mean? In that case, yeah, that's what personal brand is for. But if you just want to be a copywriter, B2B, like, meaning your target audience are clients, like, no client is on Instagram following copywriters. That's not what they're doing. They're not even on Instagram. If they need a copywriter, they're going to another copywriter, a better copywriter, or creative director, or other people that has worked with good copywriters, and saying, hey, do you know a copywriter? Right? So the way you grow that business, like, she grew her entire copywriting business without her social media, without her email list, or none of that. You know what I mean? I built Night Owl Agency without even being on Instagram once. Do you know what I mean? That business doesn't get built on social media.
Okay.
If you want to do copywriting client service. If you want to build a brand and sell a product, that's a different story.
So that was going to be another question. Is I got a lot out of last week's podcast with Beck, who's wonderful. I love what she's doing, and she's like 100 steps ahead of me. And so if I'm going down the creative writing path or being a writer, how would you suggest social media in terms of posting every day, or doing the 100-day challenge,
Okay.
or all of that?
Yeah.
Or is that too?
The first thing I would really, do you know Seth Godin?
Yeah.
Okay, so the first thing I would recommend is do the thing that Seth Godin said is so for 20 years he's written a blog post every day, and he hasn't missed a day. And the story he always says is that just one day he decided to do it, and he said it wasn't even it was a decision, right? That there's no argument. Like, every day I just have to do it, right? Even if it's just one word, it's like set in stone. There's no breaking the rule, right? And he's done it. And if you look at, like, what Steven Pressfield said, and you look at most writers, they say the same thing. And the reason why is because there is no such thing as writer's block. Nobody has a writer's block. Like, everybody thinks they have writer's block. Oh, I don't have anything to write about. I don't know what to, I don't, like, everybody thinks they have a writer's block. And, like, Seth Godin always says that. He says, like, okay, you don't know what to write about. Oh, you have a writer's block. Okay, show me your bad writing then. Like, show me 10,000 pages of your bad writing, and now tell me that you don't have anything to write about, and that you don't have a good idea. Because I said before, right? There's no difference between writing and thinking. So if you're not writing, or if you're not having like, for me, the idea that I have, everything I've learned, every knowledge that I accumulated, it was the dots that was connected while I'm having a conversation like this with you, or with people, or while I was writing. Because those two, while you're having a conversation or you're writing, it forces you to think overdrive. So your brain goes into this hyperdrive mode where it starts connecting dots like crazy. Do you understand what I mean? So you need to keep yourself in those modes, right? Like if you put aside an hour every day and write every day, no matter what, right? If you put aside an hour every day and have a Zoom conversation with a friend like what Joe Rogan does, like having a conversation every day on podcasts, or like if you force yourself to do that exercise every day, that's like going to the gym every day, putting in an hour of gym every day. You know, you're working that muscle, right? And you keep working that muscle, and that's where creativity comes. And I guarantee you, the reason why I told that girl to start a Substack and start a mailing list and start writing every day was not because that's going to help her get audience. It will help her get audience. But the real reason is because it's going to help her figure out what her real ideas are. What do I really feel strongly about? What my opinions are? And this is what I want to put out in the world. And I think that's like, you know, the root of that is journalism, right? Like that's what journalists do, right? Journalists are trying to expose the truth, right? That they believe is important. So, you know, if you look at, you know, Chuck Palahniuk majored in journalism. Chuck Palahniuk is my favorite writer. He's the author of Fight Club. And he majored in journalism. And he said that journalism is like the real form of writing. Because like you're just observing the truth, and, you know, you're putting in your own words rather than just like, yeah, I actually think journalists, like good investigative journalists, make great fiction writers, because journalists have to write the truth. So when you know, I don't know if you heard this before, but you know, all great fictions are based on truth.
Yeah.
If it's not, it's not.
There's a whole genre. Yeah.
Yeah. Like for some reason, when you watch a fiction, even though it's made up, something feels true. Like when you watch, you know, like Beauty and the Beast or those things, obviously it's a fairy tale, but there's some universal truth to it. Do you understand what I mean? And if you defy that, all of a sudden it doesn't work. You don't feel the same thing anymore. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
And
it's like you could connect the dots from your own life to that story.
Yeah.
And that's
It's like,
why
oh
it
yeah,
kind of
you can relate.
fascinates
It's like,
you.
exactly. Yeah. You can't really explain with words, but there's some emotional chemistry that happened when you just watch that scene and you're like, oh shit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's because it's the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. I think books can be almost more powerful because it's your imagination is creating what you want it to look like in a way, rather than someone else's. Yeah,
exactly. But that can only happen if you write it. So fuck, I forgot his name again. But there's this writer who has a masterclass, and really great masterclass. But one of the things he says, like that everything, he's the author of Coraline. Like everything he wrote,
Neil Gaiman.
Yeah, Neil Gaiman. Yeah, like everything he wrote in those stories, like the individual things are real things that really happened to him or happened to someone he knows. Like they're all based on truth, the tiny little truth situations. But that's what makes like that's what writers do when they write a movie. Like the writers get like, oh, let's have a scene like this. This happened to me when I was in high school. Like, and when it's real like that, that's what makes it good. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, something relatable, but true for you, the writer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's kind of what journalists are trained to do, right? Like, rather than just making stuff up, which is what a lot of fiction writers do. Not the good ones, but a lot of beginner fiction writers they just make shit up and they think that's good, right? Whereas in journalists, no, there's this fundamental truth about humanity, and you have to stay within those bounds of that rule. Otherwise, it becomes, like if somebody loses a parent when they're young, and they're not traumatic, they don't have trauma for it, and they're like, oh, I'm strong and blah blah blah. Like, that's not gonna feel right because like that just broke the universal truth. Do you understand what I mean? So that's why it has to be based on truth. Yeah. Fuck, today I just talked so much. Sorry. Like, it's
No, it was great. Thank you.
give you your
Thank
follow
you
up.
so much. So, if you were in my shoes and you're leaning more towards creative writing, would you just start posting on Instagram every day or
Yeah.
opening TikTok or all of
Yeah, I
those
would
things?
either do a Substack blog or something like that where you can write every day. Like, you can
Okay.
write something every day, whether it's like one paragraph or a whole page or whatever it is, and keep posting it every day, right? And then on your Instagram or social media, tell people to like subscribe to it. And in the beginning you might just have a couple people, but then but don't mind that. This is for you.
Okay.
It's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
for
yeah.
them. It's for you.
Right.
And then I would do the same thing on Instagram. I would take that, put it as a caption, post it on Instagram, post it on LinkedIn, just post it everywhere. You know what I mean? Or just take that, post a screenshot of it on Instagram, and then tell them to go to your link in bio to subscribe to the Substack or something like that, or subscribe to your newsletter if you want to do it by email, not online. And then same thing on LinkedIn. Every time you post a Substack, you share it on LinkedIn, you share it on Twitter. Just keep publishing it out there so people who find it will find it and things like that. But just remember that it's for you, right?
Okay.
And I honestly think if you do this for a year, if you write something, because it's almost like journaling, right? If you do that every day for a year, I honestly think it'll be life-changing for you. Like, I honestly think you're going to look back to this day, like next Christmas, you're going to look back and be like, holy fucking shit, like how my life has changed just because of this one little practice. Do you know what I mean?
Thank you so much. This is the best Christmas present.
Early Christmas.
Early Christmas, yeah.
Any follow-up question to that? To that?
No, I think you answered. I have a bunch written on Post-its, but I asked them all. So yeah, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
and you can come back. You can come back in a couple months or
I would
check in
love
how
to.
you're doing. And yeah, look forward to seeing your Substack.
Woo! All right, it's happening.
Thanks
Thank
so
you so
much,
much,
George. It's
Sam.
great to see you. And I'll hopefully see you on Sunday.
Yes, see you on Sunday.
Cheers.
Ciao.
Bye, George. All right, let me see if there's any questions here before we end. Hey, Tabitha. Jayshri. Hi, Ruda. Hey, Steven. What was the first book? So the two books that I mentioned they're both by Stephen Pressfield. One is called Turning Pro, and the other one is called War of Art. Turning Pro, let me put in the Turning Pro and War of Art. Not Art of War, War of Art. Okay. See if there's any more questions. Oh, Gigi already answered. Okay. I think that's all good. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for coming today. We'll see you again next week. If you're not a Night Owl Nation member, you can join on my website, sunyi.co. And Night Owl Nations are invited to be on guests on this show, get on the hot seat. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming. See you next week. Bye. Bye, everyone. And thank